It's time for the Financial Crisis Talk Center with Ken Gross and David Einstandig from Thav Gross.
Credit card debt is number one. I view it as financial cancer.
40% of your gross income is going to just pay the debt service. You got no chance of getting out.
I would give up my credit score to get rid of debt.
Here's your host, Ken Gross.
Good morning. Welcome to the Financial Crisis Talk Center. This morning, today's word of the day or word of the segment is harassment. My co-host with me this morning,
ready to harass
not David
you?
Einstandig, Brian Small.
Good morning, Ken. Ready and able to harass you this morning?
I should have used harassment as the word of the day a long time ago. It seems as though I've been around you and David for all these years.
It's a lovely color you're sporting in your hair this morning.
Oh, so now because David's off today, you've got to play copycat?
Yes, absolutely. But
remember,
I promise not to mention anything about a muscle tee.
Dave, on the TV version, Dave's our producer on the show. On the TV version of the show, remind me to put a slide on for a copycat at the beginning. I'll take care of that. I'll get even with you, Brian. We'll do a copycat
on a daily basis.
You
do
with your face imposed on it. With us in the studio this morning, we've got a special guest, friend of mine, attorney Gary Nitzkin. Gary is an expert in the area of basically suing debt collectors, defending people from the standpoint who are being, that's why we came up with the word of the day, harassed by debt collectors. Good morning, Gary. And we're going to talk this segment on the show about harassment and what the remedies are. And I kind of want to segue into the issue with an article that, believe it or not, Brian found for me yesterday in doing his diligent homework for the show that after years of counseling, you finally started to do. I'm kidding you, but you found a great article, and it was in a publication, an online publication called Counterpunch, and the headline of the article was "Terrorized by Collectors," and I kind of just want to share a couple of the quotes from there, and then see how this fits in with what Gary does as an attorney. Going after debt collectors. And then here's one of the lead quotes in the article. It says about 30 million Americans were saddled with alleged debt in collection in 2012. Yet the hodgepodge regulatory system over debt collection abuse fails to protect the harassed as law has fallen behind technology and the extent of the problem, leaving literally millions of people like Tate to fend for themselves against the terror of collectors. So when I read this, I said to myself, well, who's Tate? But who Tate is the guy that in the first paragraph of the article they're talking about who was harassed. But go on a little bit further. It says 4 years after Congress created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and gave it limited authority over collectors, the agency is still studying the issue. Then another little comment here is
leave that to Congress to study for everything.
Well, the
federal government.
The Consumer Financial Protection, we've talked about it on the show. They have gone after the credit card companies on some $1.44 billion in compelled refunds and fines against some major credit card companies.
It's easy to shoot fish in the barrel. Protect the little guy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Debt collection agencies will experience renewed demand as people regain the ability to pay. That's from IBIS World. So, we went through from 2008 till now. Debt collection was plenty of harassment going on, but you also had the problem where people were so broke that they couldn't pay. So I guess there's some theory that maybe debt collection went downhill a little bit in terms of volume. But now that the economy is doing a little bit better and there's a greater ability to pay, but maybe also a reluctance to pay, they're saying debt collection harassment may increase. But the essence of this article is basically saying the CFPB's authority only extends to the largest companies, which their proposed rules, which haven't become finalized yet, will only govern 175 companies. But right now there's 9,599 collectors as of last fall. And another one is 22% of the complaints regarding collectors bothering third parties such as family, friends, coworkers, employers, and neighbors. So the essence of this article is basically saying the consumers don't have a remedy, or they don't have an adequate remedy because the CFPB isn't doing enough, the FTC isn't doing enough. But I got to tell you something. I don't think that Gary's going to agree with them, and I don't agree with him after getting to know Gary and seeing what he's done. There are remedies, aren't there, Gary?
There certainly are. The Fair Credit Reporting Act provides a host of remedies to consumers. Our biggest challenge is educating consumers so they know what their remedies are. That has been our biggest problem to date.
You know, the big thing is let me give a little background on Gary, by the way. He's an MSU graduate with a BA in business, so he's got a bit. There's a synergy there in that we use what we call the tools of financial crisis management to solve financial problems for clients. And we take a business approach to it. We don't, you know, I'm an accounting student as well, and an attorney, and we've been business lawyers for 32 years. So we've dissected the problem with a business type of an approach, not your quote unquote bankruptcy approach or your tax relief approach. It's more of a business approach as to which discipline and which tool is the right one. And I think that's kind of the way you've dissected this area from the standpoint of creditor harassment. So what can you do? How do you go after debt collectors?
Well, it depends what the debt collector does. The statute that I referred to earlier, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, we call it the FDCPA. It's a great tool for consumers, but it's really a great tool only if the consumer knows what their rights are under it. It governs debt collectors. It does not govern consumers. Debt collectors, for example, can't call you before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. They can't threaten to take your assets. They can't threaten you at all. They can't swear at you. They can't cuss at you. There's a whole list of things they cannot do. That is to say necessarily that you as a consumer can't swear, can't cuss, and can't threaten the debt collector, and you don't violate the law. If more people...
So I guess it's not a two-way street.
It is not a two-way street, and many debt collectors are really quite chagrined to learn that it's not a two-way street, but interestingly, they only find this out after we sue them.
So does it sometimes come? I suppose this is what the debt collectors will say. I was perfectly fine on the phone until this person started screaming and hollering at me, and then I lost my cool and yelled back.
We hear a lot of that, and they say
that's not a defense.
I responded in kind. Well, guess what, Mr. Debt Collector? You don't get to respond in kind. My client can cuss you out. You cannot return the favor without violating the law.
Okay, we're in a court of law, and the client says, these things happen, and these things happen. They swore at me. They told me I was going to go to jail. They threatened to come to my house and take my stuff. How do I prove it?
Well, in today's date of the technology that we have, a lot of these telephone conversations are recorded. We get those recordings.
Are you able to subpoena them and get them?
We're able to subpoena them. We're able to get them. We get phone records. We subpoena those. Debt collectors, at least the legitimate ones, keep records of these conversations.
We're coming up to a break. We come back, we're going to stay right on this and talk about more what things they can't do.
Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Fav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Fav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
You like your job. What you don't like is the way your boss has been treating you. He's making comments about how you look instead of your work, and he's been touching you inappropriately. If you complain, is he allowed to fire you? Absolutely not. Unwelcome sexual comments, advances, and contact are illegal in the workplace. Make him pay. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Fav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
Every family has the family meeting, and we all know what that means. Dad's got dementia. What are we going to do? What's the care plan that the family has in place? Usually they don't or they struggle with a care plan. When you go home tonight and you talk to your tax person and you talk to your financial person, say, what's the plan that you have in place? And as soon as they don't give you an answer, give me a call, because I can do it for you.
Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
All right, welcome back. We've got Gary Nitzkin with us, consumer lawyer fighting debt collectors. Word of the day, word of the segment is harassment. Before we get back to what we were talking about with Gary, I want to give a couple quick announcements. First of all, I've mentioned a new law several times on the show called Reg X, which came about actually by the consumer. One of the good things the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau did is Reg X became effective January 10th this year, and it governs lenders on loss mitigation. If they want to foreclose on a principal residence, and it applies to all lenders, they must comply with the provisions of Reg X, which impose a whole bunch of deadlines and procedures that lenders must follow. It hasn't gotten a lot of press in the media for a couple reasons. One is, if you read Reg X, it says the lenders don't have to give you any kind of a modification on any kind of mandatory basis, but they have to follow the procedures. So the commentators are looking at it and saying, what does this accomplish? Well, we figured out it accomplishes a lot, because lenders are not capable of following rules, and they botch things up all the time in following the procedures, and that gives us avenues to force them into modification modes, to start their foreclosure over, to deal with us and to work with us. So in order to help educate everybody, I've written a report on this new law, and it's called How to Save Your Home with Regulation X, The Hidden Secrets. I actually spent the time. It's a 10-page report, and it goes through Reg X from the standpoint, not from the lender's standpoint, from the standpoint of how we use Reg X to leverage the problem of avoiding foreclosure on a home. And if you want it, it's free. You got it, but there's a website you've got to go to get to it, and it is regxhomesaver.com. I'm going to repeat it one more time, regxhomesaver.com. If you watch the TV show version of this of our show, it'll be on the on the screen. It'll be a little bit easier to remember. Brian, can you remember that?
regxhomesaver.com.
If Brian's got it, then everybody should have it without any problem. Right?
Right.
You agree with me?
Especially at this time in the morning.
Anyway, I think it's a worthwhile report. Feel free to download it. The Financial Crisis Analyzer, which is on our website, is still up and running. You can always go to that. You click on the Analyzer button. You input your data, and it immediately generates a report back to you as to what your viable options are in terms of whether you're a short sale candidate, a loan modification candidate, whether bankruptcy is smart or not smart, Chapter 7, Chapter 13, or whether maybe you should be in
debt resolution, or even budget counseling sometimes. So
you've got
opportunities run amok.
So you've got that. We've got a couple seminars coming up. Then I want to get back to Gary. Seminar coming up, Strategic Debt Elimination. And if you're watching a TV show, it's going to be after some of these dates. But here are the dates. April 30th is the up-and-coming one from 7 to 8:30 in Bingham Farms. May 7th in Lansing from 6:30 to 8. And also Wednesday, June 4th in Bingham Farms, 7 to 8:30. You want to sign up for the seminar, just go to our website, thavgross.com or financialcrisistalkcenter.com, and click on the link to sign up for the seminar. Or the old-fashioned way, you can call the phone number, 888-235-HELP. We've got one more seminar coming up, and that is called Protecting Your Life's Work. It's not a financial crisis per se seminar. It focuses on the elderly and financial issues that you're facing, is whether it's you or your parents are looking at the prospect of a nursing home. You have Medicaid issues. If you're a veteran, there are veteran benefits available for wartime vets that can get aid independent care up to $2,100 per month and there's no look-back rule that attaches to that, like Medicaid has a 5-year rule. The whole thing you need to know on that is the inevitability often hits. If you live long enough, the nursing home prospect exists for you. It will bankrupt you. You have to be smart about planning for that so you can preserve your assets, let Medicaid and the government pick up as great of the cost as possibly can do. Keep in mind, it's all about preserving future income, preserving what you've built on to save through your life. If you want to sign, those seminars are Tuesday, May 13th at the Grosse Pointe War Memorial and Wednesday, May 21st at the Royal Oak Public Library. Samasco Law, Pat Samasco, I don't know who Phil is. Pat Samasco, my good friend who was on the show last week.
You're just getting confused because Phil Kavanaugh's supposed to be joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good point. And our law firm, Tav Gross, is sponsoring it. If you want to sign up for that, go to cannotaffordtolose.com. That's the website we set up for it, cannotaffordtolose.com. It's like you cannot afford to lose everything you've worked for and saved your whole life just because you're looking at the prospect of the nursing home. All right, now let's flip back to debt collection. So Gary, here's first of all, we've got a couple laws, and because both of our firms do represent people in financial issues, there's a strong synergy between it. So we've looked at those laws too, and one of the distinctions I wanted to bring out is Michigan actually has a law that adds additional remedies that some states don't have.
We do. We have the Michigan Collection Practices Act, which goes a step further. While the FDCPA applies to third-party debt collectors, those that are third parties to the debt, the Michigan Collection Practices Act actually governs the debtor themselves. I'm sorry, the creditor themselves. So there are things the creditors must do and cannot do.
Yeah, there's a big distinction. Let's say you're getting harassed by Bank of America because you haven't made your payment. And I'm not picking on Bank of America. They're such a big bank, it's possible that they could be harassing them. But it could be Chase, it could be Citi, it could be any one of a number of them. If they're calling you direct, then the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act doesn't apply because they're not a third-party collector for themselves, right?
That's correct, and I'll be happy to harass all of those banks because I've sued all of those banks, and I typically have at least 2 or 3 lawsuits against any one of them at any one time. I'll be happy to harass them.
And the good part of that is the Michigan law provides you the remedy because you're allowed to sue them even though they're not the third-party collector, right?
That's absolutely correct.
So we have to give, Phil Kavanaugh is expected to join us shortly for the show. We have to give, and we talked with Phil about the state legislature's shortcomings a lot that we've seen over the last couple of years, but this happens to be a good law. This is one on the books that is anti-bank, pro-consumer, which is something that we are kind of short of in law. Like, we have the Michigan Consumer Protection Act that does absolutely nothing for consumers in Michigan because of all the decisions that have come out limiting it. But this act happens to be a good one. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to focus on this issue, what they can do and what they can't do when they're making those phone calls to you. We'll be back after the break.
Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Are you struggling to pay your mortgage? Afraid of foreclosure and the financial mess it can cause? Time is not on your side. Call Alan Stalter, the short sale specialist. For years, Alan has been helping distressed homeowners navigate through the short sale process. His experience will get you out of your home without the credit score damage that follows foreclosure. If you want a fresh start, you need to call Alan Stalter, the short sale specialist, 248-854-3829 or MetroDetroitShortSale.com.
Is the debt piling up? Struggling to get by?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Going from hourly to salary seemed like a good career move, but now you're working 60 hours a week instead of 40, and you aren't getting paid any of that extra time. You're stuck, right? Wrong. You can be on salary and still be entitled to overtime. If you've been wrongly denied such pay, you may be entitled to that and more. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Fav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Fav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
All right, welcome back. I want to give a little quick shout out to our sponsors. Thank them for their support. Gold Star Law, Samasco Law, Elite REO Services, Alan Stalter, short sale specialist, Trips Auto Shop and Collision Center in Jackson and Lansing, and coming on board U.S. Staffing in Jackson and Lansing, as well as Cardiology Associates in Michigan. Appreciate the support. All right, so we're talking with Gary Nitzkin. Gary, what's the name of of your firm?
Michigan Consumer Credit Lawyers.
All right, so you get the gist of what Gary does in terms of fighting creditors and suing them for harassment. But here's what I want to focus on. What can't they do? Because they're allowed to call. But where does it step beyond the point of what a debt collector is allowed to do, where somebody should then be trying to find you to maybe sue that creditor or that debt collector?
The FDCPA has a list of prohibitions. Let's talk about the biggest violations that we've seen. When a debt collector calls a third party, they might call your employer and say, Joe owes a debt. Big violation. They're not allowed to call at work. They might call a family member.
Wait. Let's go slower. Can they call at work but not say what it's regarding?
Yes, they can call at work as long as they don't identify themselves as debt collectors.
What about this? Let's say the guy's name is Joe Smith. Can they call up and say, is Joe there, or do they have to ask for Mr. Smith?
Well, if we're going to split hairs, and the courts are known for splitting
well,
hairs
listen,
on this.
Gary, I've known you how many years? Let me tell you something. I'm raising my right hand and putting it in whatever I have to put it on. You're a hair splitter.
I'm a hair splitter.
Okay, go ahead. Which is good. Any good. Although you and Brian don't have that much hair to split, I have to say. You've got more than Brian. Being a hair splitter is what being a good lawyer is about. So go ahead. So can they say, is Joe there? Like they're being sneaky to try and get the call through, and the employer might think that the person's getting a personal call at work.
We're going to split one of my very few hairs, and we're going to split it like this. The courts have held that the communication must be one in connection with the collection of a debt. For example, if a debt collector and a consumer are walking down the street and the debt collector says, hello, consumer, that is not a communication, and the FDCPA doesn't apply. Let's look at the other extreme. They're walking down the street and the debt collector says, consumer, you owe me money or I will take your car. The FDC does apply. Using those extreme analogies, if a debt collector calls work and says, is Joe Smith there? As long as the debt collector does not identify himself as a debt collector, the FDC doesn't apply.
That's kind of annoying a little bit. So is that's their normal? Is that their normal MO or not? Or is there no normal MO?
Well, typically debt collectors call at work to verify employment, and they're savvy enough these days to make those calls without identifying themselves. A smart receptionist, or a well-trained receptionist, I should say, will typically ask, may I ask who's calling? And under the law, the debt collector then has to identify himself. Instead of identifying his employer, who will say, I'm Bill Smith.
Okay. And
again, the call is
okay.
It's still not one that's governed by the FDCPA
because he hasn't mentioned a debt.
Exactly.
But if I'm with NCO Financial Services and he said the name of the company, but he hasn't said what they do, where does that go? I like splitting hairs too, Gary.
Ken, I've known you for as many years, and I know you to be a hair splitter.
Yes.
We're going to split one of yours next.
Okay.
If the debt collector says this is...
I think we did that last week in a case we were with, against each other. But go ahead.
Oh, my God. I think we were about to split skulls.
Yes, we were. Which is an interesting point. Gary and I have been on the same side of cases, and we've been on the opposite side of cases in the terms of our practice. And we go at it, well, I don't know what the right analogy is.
Tooth and nail.
Tooth and nail. But that's business, you know, and we're also friends. All right, so he says the name of his firm, but he doesn't say it's a debt collector. Is that getting close? Or
That's a whole different body of case law. That's related. Because some debt collection agencies have the name collection in their name, and that makes their name, the mention of their name, governed by the FDCPA. NCO Financial Services, that would be a violation of the FDCPA.
But if it was Miller and Smith, that's it. Like Miller and Smith PC.
Correct. If it was Miller and Smith PC and there was no way for a third party to discern that it was a debt collector, you would be correct. It would not be governed by the FDCPA.
What if it's a known
wait, I want to move
debt collector just in the world? Miller and Smith is the most famous debt collector in the world. Everybody should know who they are.
You don't have that many hairs to split. I'm not sure I want to split that one.
It's a good point, though, Brian. What about this? What about where they call the relatives?
Oh,
what about when they call the cell phones? Any limitations on that?
The cell phones. Let's talk about that first, because the cell phones are governed by another body of law called the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. It's a federal statute, and it says that a debt collector cannot call a consumer on their cell phone unless they have a pre-existing relationship with that consumer, or unless the consumer has consented to providing that phone
number. That's a good
number.
one, because that goes on a lot. I see it all the time.
Does.
Now, because we're running short of time. If they violate the law and they call you, what do you then do? What does it cost? How do you collect money from these debt collectors? How do you stop it? How do you get paid?
We don't charge our consumers a dime. Our services are completely free to consumers, and that's been our biggest challenge to getting new clients. We get our clients the greater of actual damages or $1,000, whichever is greater under the statute, and we stick the debt collector with our fees and costs. We get our clients their money directly without an issue.
So the statute allows actual attorney fees, and then you can get damages for what they've done. So you collect from the debt collector, kind of like on a contingency fee type of arrangement.
Well, not contingency, and it's not actual attorney fees. We get reasonable attorney fees under the statute as the judge deems fit. And typically our fee petitions are approved. Some judges allow them in full. Some judges cut them a little bit. That happens. But it's reasonable attorney fees. It's not contingent. There are two aspects to what we recover. One are damages for our client, and the other are attorney fees.
All right. If you want to reach Gary, if you're facing debt harassment, you've got two ways to do it. You can always call me at our firm, 888-235-HELP, or go on our website. We'll get a link over to Gary. Or you can call Gary direct. He's got an 888 number. It's 888-293-2882. Thanks for joining us, Gary.